Hi, thank you for joining me on another episode of the Tech Exec Podcast, where I'll help you create teams worth leading, because life's too short to lead mediocre teams. As always, I'm your host, Aviv Ben-Yosef, advisor and coach to tech execs worldwide. And our subject today is manufacturing urgency. Before drilling into that, I want to first let you know that I've got a new kind of offering following with how successful were my Leadership Leap series, where I had these live streams that people could join, and seeing how much people like those, I decided to do something that's just regularly that. Aviv Unplugged is just some sort of a club where you can join and get these monthly sessions with me to ask your questions, along with a lot of extra goodies that I hope to be able to add once we get enough people there. Right now, there's a ridiculously priced introductory offering. The link will be in the show notes, and I'm hoping to see you there. For me, it's a sort of a new type of thing that I'm excited yet worried about, and I hope you're going to like it. Now, let's talk about manufacturing urgency. Urgency is one of those words that we in tech love throwing around, especially founders do. I've yet to meet a CEO that wasn't worried about maybe the team not having enough urgency. And the first issue with this concept is that while I do agree we need, in general, a sense of urgency, I do not believe that teams that are too lackadaisical, that are taking things just too much at stride, can be successful. Nevertheless, when urgency becomes an end and not a means to an end, that's already an issue. And often, our way of judging whether people are working with the right sort of attitude and urgency is completely off. Most CEOs, when they complain to me, say things like, 5 p.m., everyone just leaves. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't care if people actually have lives and go live them past work hours. That doesn't mean that they're not working with urgency. My test is entirely different. How are we spending the time that we are at work, that we are concentrated in working? In fact, I will say the opposite. Not only that you don't need to be working long hours in order to have urgency, I've seen long hours cause the exact opposite, because all of a sudden I had nowhere to go. I was not in a rush. I knew I was going to sit in the office for 13, 14 hours a day. Been there. And therefore, who cared if I wasted 30 minutes scrolling something, because it's not as if I could go home earlier. I was just going to sit there anyway, because that's the atmosphere. We were all grinding. Not good. If you want to have real urgency, don't look at the inputs such as how many hours they're working and whether they are coding at night or in the weekend or stuff like that. That's not what we want to do. Yes, if there's genuinely some sort of issue, something that really requires us pulling an all-nighter, working in the weekend, okay. If there's something unique, something that really merits that, okay, I get that, and I would like to be in a team where people will do that when necessary. And still, if that becomes the rigor way of working, you're doing things in a way that's not sustainable, not going to attract the best talent, and just is not, if you're always acting at that level of urgency, you're going to lose the urgent part. You cannot always be alert. You have to have something that's normal. And even more, I'll say that when we, as leaders, pull the all-nighter, when we make the team do that, we have to actually show some respect to the fact that they did something that's out of the ordinary. You cannot just say good and keep on working, and you cannot manufacture urgency by putting the team into these stressful moments just because you want to make them work. I've seen CEOs who had this MO. They would agree to deadlines that made no sense and then urge the team to meet them, working real long hours, working really hard. And then once they got to the deadline, the CEO would just go and do the same thing all over again, thinking that was the way to keep the team alert. Sorry, I'm not into that. I don't think that's how you create amazing teams. Instead, what you want to do, if you're a tech leader and you want to create healthy urgency, you need to start with just making your culture a culture that takes people's time seriously. And that makes things entirely different. For example, when you really care about meetings, so you're just not allowing people to create meetings that are useless, when people see with how much intent and deliberateness you view meetings, they will value your time and other people's time a lot more. So urgency will be created just like that. Not because I need to whip people into working long hours, and eventually you're gonna realize that this is just a game. Someone's always pushing on that you have to work long hours button because there's some deadline stress, because that's what they like to do, and not because there is a deadline stress. At some point, people are gonna say, "Hey, why do we keep saying yes to those ridiculous deadlines?" Right? I don't want that. I want people like you on the day-to-day think about how you're using people's time. So first of all, don't allow people to just create meetings if they're unnecessary. Never allow people to sit in a meeting with their laptop open as if they're in the meeting but not in the meeting. I always say either what's happening right now, what we're discussing, is important enough to warrant your attention, or what you're doing on your laptop is more important and merits your full attention. Choose one and do that. I would rather you give people permission to not attend meetings they don't value than have them in the meetings but not really in the meeting. So whatever they're doing, they're not doing at full capacity. And they're making things worse for everyone else that's actually interested in the meeting, because you have that person that's always typing away. And when you ask questions, they need to have the last couple of sentences repeated because they weren't really listening. We can't really multitask like that most times. So no, allow people to say, no, I'm not going to attend that meeting, or I'm going to leave early once I've said what I had to say, or I'm going to send an email and that's it. Have meetings, have real agendas. Remove meetings that make no sense. Allow people to get recordings of meetings and watch them at double speed if they just want to be updated about stuff, and don't actually have the need of speaking in those meetings. Just want to know what's happening. Even better, have those recordings automatically be transcribed so they can just go over real quickly the AI summary and, jump into the exact moment that interests them because they can find it in the transcript. Think about how much you show people that their time is worth when you go into that hassle of making meetings that much more effective. Add to that how you should tackle any sort of planning meeting from the point of view of, is that really necessary? Do we have to do that, or can we cut it? And again, not from the point of view of being argumentative with product, but by always trying to find a way to maximize impact per engineer. I want every line of code we write to have a higher impact. I want to be really, every PR to be so impact dense, you can't remove anything from it. It is just bare bones what's needed, and we're going to add the extras only after we really know that it is necessary. So even when we add those later, after we have less risk, after we have more validation, that's already impactful. We know that. So teach your people how to weigh these things, how to have these value conversations with their peers in product, so that everyone understand what's at stake and they can all see, again, how much we value engineers' time. I want everyone to be able to see that our time is critical. I always say life's too short to waste them. Every day is a day you're not getting back. So yeah, from time to time, you're going to have less impactful days. You're going to have less effective days. You're going to have, some company stuff. That's fine. Nothing's perfect. But in general, your default, what people see as your company culture, is that we care about the time so much that we don't let it just be wasted. We don't easily allow some meetings, there's exception log meetings with no real agenda. I hate, sometimes my clients ask me about an offsite that they're having. I'm like, okay, what's the agenda? And it's like 3 blocks. Each one is like 3 hours. gathering, talking about this, talking about that. I'm like, come on, who's going to talk about those things for 3 hours? You're never going to get anything meaningful out of that meeting. You're going to get everyone zoomed out within like 10 seconds. That's a waste of a day of your entire leadership team. Instead, chunk things into actionable targets, what we want to get out of every discussion that we're having. Think about how much time that needs. Think whether we need to prepare for it when it comes to the agenda. Do we need to send people materials in advance? Do we need to do some research in order to be able to make actual decisions on the offsite as we're there? That sort of stuff. When you do that, you show everyone just how much you mean business. And that, my friend, is real urgency. When I go into a meeting and I see that everyone there mean business, I can see that they want to get moving, that they focus on what's important, that we reduce fluff, that people come in prepared, the people who are in the meeting actually attend the meeting. That's how we show how our time is critical. When we ask people for their, weekly estimates, what they think they can work on, when we're planning the sprint, this is not about making people give me always shorter estimates to make them cram more work. This is about saying, here's what we want to achieve. What's the fastest way we have to get there? And that's, again, how we create healthy, maintainable, long-term urgency that doesn't burn people out, that reaches what we want to reach, and that creates a team worth leading. That's it for this week. Thank you for joining me. I hope I just helped you create a better sense of urgency in your team. If you want to ask me some questions about it, if you have some thoughts, my email's in the show notes, and I'm always happy to hear. Again, check out Aviv Unplugged, my new offering that right now, again, is still at ridiculously introductory pricing that you have to check out. Link in the show notes. And as always, if you haven't yet, do check out my newsletter, the best newsletter online for tech execs, waiting to see you there. And I'll see you next week. Ciao.